My name is Tanya, and I grew up in a small town in England. When I was 13 years old, my mom died suddenly. She wasn't sick, didn't have an illness or anything, and it was a really, really devastating time for me. I was really, really close to my mom, and my whole world literally just fell apart. Now, my mom had a lot of friends. And there was one particular set of friends that I had known for my entire life. And we lived really close to them when I was a baby. So my dad would take me and my younger sister over to their house on Saturdays and the weekends after my mom died, so we could be parented, I guess. They also had daughters similar to ages to me. And things began to change a little bit. The husband of this family, Roy, and my dad decided to get tickets to a small pop concert that was coming to our town, which was really unusual. And so we got the tickets, and me, my dad, and my sister, and Roy and his two daughters, we all went to this pop concert together. And I remember moving away wanting to not be with the adults. I wanted to be in the middle with all the other people, singing along to the music. And when I did that, Roy came up and stood right behind me. And I felt really uncomfortable. I felt really icky. And so I kind of moved away. And right away, he'd come right up behind me. And it wasn't just like standing behind me. He was literally touching me from behind. And he'd lean over and he'd whisper things in my ears. And I could feel his breath down my neck. And it made me feel really, really uncomfortable. I was really confused and I felt really self-conscious. I realized that this wasn't normal. And so the entire evening, I just kept trying to move away and get myself lost amongst all the other people. And he would always find me, and he'd always stand right behind me or push his shoulder into me, push up right against me, and make me feel really vulnerable and uncomfortable. And towards the end of the night, I made my way back to my dad and my younger sister, who were kind of standing right at the back. And I just stood there and just couldn't wait for the concert to end so we could all just go home. And I felt really confused as to what was going on, what was happening. And this kind of started a series of events where I would go over to the house on the Saturdays, and all of a sudden I was no longer to go outside and play. I wasn't allowed to go upstairs and play with the daughters in the bedrooms. I had to sit down on the couch with Roy, and he would sit right next to me, like legs and legs touching me and shoulders and arms touching. And he would talk to me about school. What was I learning in school? And he'd want to ask me questions. And if I got them right, he'd be like really excited and give me lots of praise. And I felt really good. And if I got something wrong, he'd be like, he would chide me and make me feel really bad. And then he'd ask me, it was weird, just different things. And I always wanted to try and make things up that he would be pleased about. And at this time, I was also participating and competing in local gymnastics. So he wanted me to show him some routines. So he asked me to bring my leotard or my bathing suit over to the house, which I did. And he put on a Madonna song and asked me to show him things. So I would show him a few somersaults, a few little routines I was working on, and he was really excited. And he said he really liked them, and it made me feel really good. And he asked me to do more, so I did a few more. And then he was like, "Oh, I didn't like that part that you just did. Can you go back and do this other part?" So he'd make me redo the things that he liked over and over. And I felt encouraged and empowered that he liked some of the stuff that I was doing. And some of the other moves that I was doing that he didn't like, it made me feel really bad. And so I wanted to do the ones that he liked to see because I don't know, it just made me feel good that he was happy to see it. But at the same time, it made me feel creepy and nauseous and icky and I really uncomfortable and self-aware and self-conscious of what I was confused of what was going on. And then one time I went over to their house and their elder daughter invited me up to her room, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to go, but I was allowed to go upstairs, and that kind of felt very cool. And she was showing me her makeup and putting hairspray on me, getting me all dolled up, and it kind of felt really grown up. And then she started showing pictures in magazines, and I was a bit confused at first with these pictures because they just weren't the kind of pictures in magazines that I'd ever seen before. And they were pornographic magazines. These were like women half naked in these positions. And she told me she liked to pretend that she was in these magazines and that she liked to dress up and or undress and do these poses. And then she said we should go into her parents' bedroom. And I don't go into other parents' bedrooms. It's such a taboo thing. And I felt really uncomfortable walking in there. I was very, very self-aware walking in there. And then she proceeded to strip down and lay on the bed and in this pose. And she told me to do the same. And I was terrified. I was like frozen. And I remember thinking, what on earth is going on? I just couldn't comprehend all of this. And then I would hear footsteps coming up the stairs. And it terrified me. And as the bedroom door opened, I jumped down on the floor and I wrapped myself in all the bed sheets, just terrified and frozen. And it was her dad. And he came in and he started yelling. And he was yelling that I had ruined everything. Me laying on the floor, wrapped in the blankets, had ruined everything. And I'm like, your daughter is laying on the bed, like naked in this awful pose, and you're upset because I'm on the floor wrapped in blankets, terrified. So confusing. And I remember just the fear that was rushing through me. And once he left, I just ran down the stairs and ran out the house. I was terrified. It didn't really stop there. It just progressively got worse and worse, and I was more scared and more confused. And during this time, I began to remember something that had happened before my mom died. And this couple, Roy, they'd had other friends who lived close to them, and they had a daughter who was about the same age as me who had special needs. Now, she had come forward and told her parents that Roy had touched her and it was inappropriate. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but they went to the police and the police charged Roy. And Roy asked my dad to stand up for him in court and tell him what a good man he was and that he's trusted with his daughters and we go to his house all the time and this couldn't all be true. So my dad did that. He stood up for Roy in court and told him all those things. And this young girl wasn't believed. And the case got dismissed. And everybody was like, phew, like, what was that? And while all this was happening with me, I began to realize that this girl had not made all of this up. That she was another vulnerable girl who was being taken advantage of. And it scared me. And these instances of going upstairs with Amanda were getting progressively worse. And I was becoming more and more terrified. And later that summer, we all went on a holiday together. We stayed in a small caravan by the beach, I believe. And he would want me and my younger sister to undress into our pajamas. We were sleeping in the pull-out couch area of the caravan. He told us we should just get undressed in front of him. Like, we're just kids. Like, they're adults and we're kids. And why be embarrassed or shy? And I felt really uncomfortable, and I tried to kind of hide myself. I made my sister get undressed under the blankets. I'd make a game out of it. And I would rather face the window to get my jammies on or get dressed in the morning or do it in the bathroom, which I always go to her off about. And it was awful. But I remember laying on the beach, probably in the middle of the holiday. It was a hot day. I had my swimsuit on and I was really, really body conscious. So I put a t-shirt over my bathing suit and I was laying on a towel on the sand, and Roy came and laid right next to me, like touching my entire body. And he leaned over me almost like nose to nose and told me to take my t-shirt off. And he was just, I felt disgusting. I felt sick. And as he was leering at me, telling me just to take my shirt off, it was hot, his wife came, who was one of my mom's best friends before she died, came over and sat down and said to me, just take it off. Just get it over with and just take it off. And I realized at that point that she knew what was going on, and she wasn't going to protect me. And I was terrified, and I don't know if I screamed, but I remember my ears and my head were screaming in terror. And all these people were around, all my family was around, and no one was seeing anything. And so he eventually kind of just rolled away from me a little bit, and I just got up and ran into the sea. And I remember spending the rest of that holiday just staying away from everyone and keeping myself to myself and not doing anything. And when we got back, I said, I never want to go over there again. And for some reason, my dad said, okay. And we never had to go over to their house again. And as far as I can remember, we never saw them again. Years later, I moved to Canada and I got married, and I had kids of my own. And I remember teaching them good strangers, bad strangers. But I also taught them good friends and bad friends, that they shouldn't be friends with their friends' parents. They shouldn't be playing Lego with their friends' parents, and their friends' parents shouldn't have special relationships with them. And to me, it was just like a normal teaching. I was just being a proactive mom. And then my husband got sick and died. And I could see how vulnerable my kids were after their dad died. And I started thinking about what happened when my mom died, and how vulnerable I was, how vulnerable my kids were when their dad died. And it took years. It took like another 10 years for me to kind of put all the pieces together. And I started writing a book about my grief journey and of losing my mom and being vulnerable and losing my husband. And I started writing about what had happened in a chapter called Pruning Shears. And during that time, I decided to look up when that concert took place, because the concert, to me, in my mind, even though my timeline, I'm very confused about the timeline of the circumstances and different incidences. It feels like it's a complete memory in parts. It's hard to explain. And some things I know, I know the feelings and the emotions and the fear around it, but I can't pinpoint the action. But it all started at that concert. So I decided to look up. In the process of writing my book, I decided to look up when that concert took place. Now, my mom died in the September. This concert, because I live in a small town, it was very easy to look up this concert. And it took place in the November. And it was in 6 weeks. Within 6 weeks of my mom dying, my mom's friends, our family best friends, the husband started to groom me and take advantage of me. And that upset me, but also made me really mad that this had happened, because I remembered that years later, after I'd already moved away, that he had gone to jail for being a pedophile, basically, and hurting another girl. And I thought at that point, if I had said something at that time to someone, if I had said what he was doing, when I made the connection between what he was doing with me and what he was doing with the special needs girl prior to me, if I'd made that connection and told someone, then maybe the girls after me wouldn't have been hurt. And I decided, I just got really upset that I had been silenced for over 40 years. And I'm not now. I'm not silent anymore, and I don't care if people believe my words or anything. I know what he did, and I know he did it because I was vulnerable, and I was grieving, and I was hurting, and I know we'll no longer be quiet about it.